Morning. We are at the top of 146 with Vav at the Mishnah. Hashaleach, and we're continuing to discuss cases of when a kinyan is affected without the usual rules. Hashaleach savlanos leves chamiv. So a guy's engaged, meaning he's already done erusin, and he's not married yet, haven't done nisuin yet, which was apparently typical in the times. It would be maybe a year in between, and he sends gifts to his future wife, to his engaged spouse, to in her while she's still living in her father-in-law's house. So sholach sham me'amana, if he sent $100, v'yachol sham sudas chasan, and then he goes over and he has a meal. Right? They invite him. He comes over. He has a meal. Then, and what happens if the engagement then breaks off? A feel of a dinar, even if he only ate 1 dinar's worth, he just had a piece of sponge cake. Einon nigvin. Then he can't have his gifts back because by eating them, apparently by eating the meal in his father-in-law's house, he is indicating that he's happy with the engagement. And the fact that he's sending gifts to his wife, to his fiance, I should say, the fact that he's sending gifts is not because on condition that you're going to marry me later, right? It's because I'm so happy right now that we're engaged, I'm sending gifts. So that's not something you can take back. In other words, there's no implied condition that these gifts are only are conditional on us getting married later.
Does it make a difference that it says the Beit Chamiv and not the
Yeah, I
Kala
don't think so.
Atzma, the
I
Kala
don't.
Atzma?
I don't think so. The Gemara doesn't discuss that, but I think that would probably sounds to me like it's just describing the reality, the typical case. What if she doesn't have, she's an orphan from her father and she still has a mother. So does that mean this doesn't apply? I don't think so.
He's not sending direct. It doesn't say he's sending directly to her. That's my point.
Yeah. Maybe it is. It could be that he's sending gifts to the in-laws because he's so happy with the match. Maybe it is for the in-laws. But I don't think that's what it means here, though. Maybe the term savlanos means something specific. Look at the Rashbam. Minhag chasanim lacha kiddushin l'machar shalech leveis chamiv lichvod ishto tachshitin umine peros v'kada yayin. So it's interesting. Actually, he says the custom is day after the engagement, you would send to your father-in-law's house lichvod ishto, in honor of your wife. So does that mean it's for her, or does it mean it's like to celebrate the match? Sounds like he's saying, actually, like you're saying, to celebrate the match, and he's sending jewelry and food, and wine and oil. Sometimes, so he's sending over a feast, and maybe it's not really for her. Maybe it's for the family. And typically he would go over and join in this feast. But if he doesn't eat from the feast, then he gets the money back if the engagement breaks off. That's the next statement of the Mishnah. If he didn't partake in this feast, then if the engagement breaks off, he gets reimbursed. Shalach sivlonos merubin sheachzerim alaves bala. If he sent lots of gifts, he sent linens and he sent I don't know what else. And the idea was if he sent a lot, maybe it's not linens, but maybe it's like he sent a year's supply of wine, right? Obviously, he's intending that she should bring it with her when they get married, right? That this is her wine. Sure, they're gonna maybe use it for the Suda, but there's a year's supply. He wants her to bring it into their new home. So if he sent a lot, that he gets back if the engagement breaks off. Sivlonos muatin shetishamish ben b'veisavia anything. But if it's a small amount, if he sends over, he calls up Shoshi and he says, send over a platter for dinner tonight. That's sivlonos muatin, just a limited amount. And clearly it's meant for her to use in her father's house. Then anything that you don't get back. And here, this phrasing actually suggests that shatish tameshvan, that she should use in her father's house. So it sounds like it's a gift for her. But the first part of the Mishnah seems to be, according to Rashbam, seems to be talking about a meal for everybody. So it's actually a little unclear. Okay. Amara. Dafka dinar. Now the Mishnah said he only ate a dinar's worth. Abel pachos mi dinar low. But if he ate less than a dinar, then that doesn't count to cancel the deal. So Gemara says pshita dinar tonight. It says a dinar. Like, why would you question it? The answer is the same. I might have thought who a dinar filu pachos mi dinar b'haidiktani dinar urcha de bil sekatane. Like the Mishnah is saying, like, if he didn't even eat a dollar's worth, but what about a penny's worth, right? Like, or what about a quarter's worth? No, a dollar is like the turn of the phrase. So it means anything. So Rava is saying, no, when it says dinar, it means a dinar. If I translate that to a dollar, I don't know if that's the appropriate translation, but whatever it is, the Mishnah said, if he ate a dollar's worth, and if he ate 90 cents worth, that rule doesn't apply.
So then he gets it back.
Yeah. Tanan. We have another Mishnah. Shasa.
So that's like he didn't eat there. That would be like just similar to the phrase to the sefer, right? That if he ate less
if he ate
dinar,
less
then
than a dinar, it doesn't count.
So then he could get it back. So
yeah, right. Like he gets to the table, he tastes, he has a bite of the appetizer, and then he leaves the house, right? So maybe that indicates that he ate less than the dinar. That indicates that he's not so happy with the match, and he didn't intend for the gift to be a gift. Let's see. Okay. Now the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, if he ate a dinar's worth, shasamai, what if he drank? What if they gave him some good wine and he drank half a bottle of wine? Does that count? But he didn't eat anything. And also hutnan shluchamai. What it also says that he ate. What if he couldn't make it and he sent his his right hand man to eat over there? Does that count? Shamtnan shagalomai. Also, it says he ate in their house, right? But what if he couldn't make it and so they sent him a platter from the feast, right? What about that? Tashma, let's figure it out. The Amar Rabbeinu Shmuel. Must be on Lechad Shagel Veis Chamiv Mea Kronos Shel Kadei Yayin Shel Kadei Shemen Shel Klei Chasif Shel Klei Zav. There was a guy who sent a gift of 100 wagons of jugs of wine, barrels of wine, and jugs of oil, and silver and gold. Vishal Klei Milas. What is that? That is what that is. Fine wool, okay, and wool clothing. V'rachav b'simchaso, and he took got an Uber, he got a luxury Uber, and he's heading over to the house. And he gets to the doorstep. And they brought him out a cup of hot cider, right, to welcome him. But he hasn't gone in the house yet. V'shasa, and he drank it. Umeis, and then he dropped dead on the doorstep. So what happens then? And Rav Acha Sar Habira, an unusual name, to the Chachamim of Usha, the Amru, and they ruled Sivlonos Chasunim Libalos and Nigmin, gifts that get used up. You can't have them back. Right? So here we have a qualification of the Mishnah. It's only things that are going to get used up that you can get back. But if you send something durable, like the clothing he sent, or the gold, or the silver, that you don't get back. I'm sorry, that you do get back. It's only the consumables that you don't get back. Um,
Well, the bigger question is here, who would get them back?
well, he can demand them back, and then
No,
you
he's
take it to
dead,
court. So the Yarshim, I guess. Yeah,
but he doesn't have Yoshim yet. And well, he's not
he could
married.
have
I
Yarshim.
guess it is father and his brother
His
and so.
brothers, or it's a second
Oh,
marriage, and he already has children, right? Um, so anyway, Shmamina, but what does this have to do with the question we asked? Afilu Shasa. Even if he only drank, because here in this particular case, he only drank the cup that they brought him outside. Um, um, so now the Gemara says, what about Shamas Minafilu Pachas Midinar? If he only drank, then that must have been less than we're going to assume that was less than a dinar's worth. So that goes against our Mishnah. Ravashi, man Malan. How do you know it was less than a dinar? Maybe they gave him a drink with a pearl ground up in it. Apparently, this was something that was used medicinally. So it's not outlandish to think that this was clearly a wealthy. At least the chassan was wealthy. So maybe they were also, maybe the Kabbalah's side was also wealthy, or maybe they thought this is what he should drink. Obviously, he was maybe not of such good health because he dropped dead. So maybe they thought we're going to keep this guy alive. We're going to give him some ground up pearl in his drink, and so it was a very valuable drink. So there's just the fact that he only drank. It could have been a dinar's worth of drink, right? Maybe it was. I mean, you don't even have to go there. It could have been expensive wine, right? Um,
maybe they didn't like
anyway,
the guy, and when they ground up, there was something poisonous in there. I mean, I'm taking the opposite tack, but I don't know.
well, that doesn't. I mean, poison isn't valuable, is it? We're trying to prove that we're trying to say that, if he only drank, then must have been less than the dinar. But the Gemara says no, it could have been more than the dinar if it was a valuable drink. So it's not necessarily against our Mishnah, right? Our Mishnah said that it has to be at least worth a dinar, and here they said it was only a drink, but maybe the drink was, maybe they're going with the Mishnah, and the drink was very expensive. And Shamas Mina Filu Shigrulo. Now he didn't get into the house, right? They came out to greet him with this drink. So maybe that is against the idea that if they sent it to him, it doesn't count. Maybe it does count because here they sent it to him outside of the house. So the Gemara says, no, Dilma called Pasuk Beis Chamiv. No, the fact that he got there and he's at the door, that's considered like he came over for the dinner. Okay. Imailu. Next question. Mahu sheyishalesh. What if do you prorate it? So if, let's say, so we know from the Mishnah that if you ate a dinar's worth, then you forfeited the whole thing, right? You can't get paid back for anything. If you ate half a dinar, maybe you should get back half of what you sent. If you ate a third of a dinar's worth, maybe you should get back all but a third of what you sent. And also, Shavach Sivlos Mahu. What about if the price went up, right? You sent over whatever, you sent over a nice bottle of wine, and that wine became more expensive over time, or whatever it was. If it improved, do you get does the and the engagement is broken off, and you get to get back what you sent? Do you get back the value of what it was when you originally sent it, or the improved value? Oh, Dilma. Like if that bottle of wine was still there, they hadn't opened it, hadn't drunk it yet, they would just give back the bottle of wine at its new value, which is now worth the new value, the greater value. Dilma, Kevan di Avde Omeganve by Shalumele, maybe we would say that, okay, they still have the wine, but what if the wine had been stolen, right, or lost, or whatever? Then then the bride's family should be entitled to the um increase in price, right? Take it. Gemara says we don't know. We can't answer the question. By Rava. Rava,
From what? Wait, they're entitled to the increase in price from what? The bottle was stolen from them.
No, if it had been like, do we say that once it came into the bride's family's possession, that is the price at which it is evaluated, right? Regardless of whether it was stolen or not, right? So it's $100 bottle of wine. Now it's worth 150. Maybe they only have to pay him back $100, regardless of whether they still have the bottle of wine. The bottle of wine is now worth 150. They'll say, we're keeping the bottle of wine and we're going to pay you back the $100 it was worth when you sent it.
Oh, okay.
Bayra, so take it, we don't know. Bayrava. What about things that get used up? And they, so again, this is like the bottle of wine, right? It's something that is designed to drink, and they didn't drink it yet, right? So what about that? Do they have to? So wine was not a good idea because the Mishnah said that if it's something that's consumable, then and would have been eaten at the meal, then he doesn't get that back. He only gets back things that are durable. Okay, so my bottle of wine example was a bad example, but now let's get specific. So the bottle of wine that it should have been, one expected it to be drunk, or when you drink it, it's gone. But they haven't opened it yet, haven't opened the wine yet, and when the engagement is broken off, so do they have to send it back? This Rabbi Yacha again brought this case up. V'amru and they said that gifts that are consumable, you don't get back. But if they're durable, nigmin, then you do get them back. So it sounds like the principle is whether or not they were consumed, right? It's a category, not what actually happened. Mar says lo the balu. No, Bryson might only be talking about where they did get used up. Tashma, let's get another proof. If he sends a modest gift, and he specifies this is for you to use, then you don't get it back, right? So this appears to indicate that that if that even if they're still around, since he sent it for her to use, even if she didn't use them, sounds like you don't get them back. So Gemara says no. Tirgumarava beyeva v'sivchasa. We're talking about like little things like bathing caps or hair, hair nets, something that that is so inexpensive. It's such a small gift that it's such a token gift that we assume that he didn't expect to get them back should the engagement be broken. He said, here's some little trinket. It's a token gift, and it's not something that he would expect to get back, even if the engagement is broken. So we still don't have a proof one way or the other about the consumables that did not get consumed. There was a case where someone sent gifts to his father-in-law's home. He sent a new wine and new oil and flax garments, new flax garments on Shavuos or for Shavuos. My Kamashmalan. So like this Rabbi Yehuda Marav isn't telling us what actually happened. He's just saying, hey, guess what? Once upon a time, there was this guy who sent new wine to his bride for Shavuos. And he didn't say, and therefore, and what happens? Well, what is the point of this story? So might be the point is Chashivus Eretz Yisrael Kamashmalan. It's teaching us how wonderful Eretz Yisrael is. In other words, that this is not something you would expect to find at Shavuos time, like wine. the new crop, the new vintage of wine and oil and flax garments ordinarily wouldn't be ready until later in the year. The fact that this guy was able to do so for Shavuos is saying how great is Eretz Yisrael? Like the produce is so abundant that that this could happen.
But most
Not
of the aren't they were these rabbis in Israel? Most of the story, most this Gemara takes place in Bava, right?
well,
I mean,
well, yeah, but
sometimes the Gemara says it came from Marava, he came from Eretz Israel, but
mhm.
but how do we learn that this was taking place in Eretz Israel, not in Bava?
Well, I guess we can tell from maybe it's Rav Yehuda who lived in Eretz or Rav who lived in Eretz Yisrael, but actually didn't Rav live in Bava?
God, he did.
Yes. Um, let's see what Rashbam says.
I don't see anything in Rashbam. Oh wait, Shavcha Eretz Israel. Shema Maheret Levashel Perchoteha Ba'atzer. They wanted to cook them very fast right away, I guess.
Yeah, Levashel also means to ripen.
Oh, to ripen. Okay, right.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Good question. Um, okay, but or maybe the Gemara is just saying like maybe the story happened in Eretz Yisrael and that's why he's telling the story.
Maybe.
Maybe it's not dispositive that it was definitely in Eretz Yisrael, but like the whole question is why are you telling us this? And the Gemara is saying, well, maybe he's telling us a story that he heard about Eretz Yisrael, and that's why he's telling it to us that to tell us how great Eretz Yisrael is. Or another way to understand this is Ditain Ta'ante Tana. Um, it's just telling us that um, if the groom claims that we got engaged just before Shavuos and I sent you all this great stuff and they deny it, right? And they say how could that even be possible? Before Shavuos you wouldn't even we would that wouldn't even be available. The new crop would not be available yet. So this tells us that no, he can still that is it's or maybe saying like maybe they agree that he sent them something, but maybe it was last year's crop. They're saying, and he's saying no, it was this year's crop, so he has at least a leg to stand on, um, uh, because that's what this is telling us that it's possible that even Shua's time there could have been new produce available.
Or that they were ripening very fast. Or
Yeah, whatever. It's that's how it happened is unclear. Like maybe, typically or generally you wouldn't be able to find the new crop, but it is possible, and that's what's proved from this story. Okay, I'm Rabbi Rav. Another statement of Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rav. There was a guy that he found out about his wife that she lacked the sense of smell. Now, so what, right? So this is, maybe it sounds like he wants to get out of the marriage, right? So if you get married and then you find out afterwards that that your wife has some kind of defect, so generally speaking, we say that that was your responsibility to find out. But if it's a hidden defect, then maybe you couldn't have found out. Anyway, this guy is married, and they tell him your wife has no sense of smell, and he's like, "Wow, I was tricked. I don't want to be married to her," but he wants to find out if it's true. So So she wanders into a ruined building, and he comes in after her. He comes in with her to test her. Amarla said, I smell the smell of a radish in the galil. So he wants to know what she's going to say. Is she going to say, "Yeah, I smell it too"? And like it's unclear if he actually had it had such a radish. So if he didn't have one with him, and she says, "Yeah, I smell it too," then she's faking. right? Or if he had it with her and she says, "Oh, I don't smell anything," then that indicates that she has no sense of smell. So what does she say? Amalei, she answered, Man yoivla mikosavos yiricho v'achlona be. Oh, you smell a radish would be great if it came along with dates of Yericho that we could eat it with. That was something that a good food pairing. And then Nafal, and by the way, and I'm sorry, so they weren't married, but they were engaged. Um, and he goes in with her to a churva, so it could be, we might think that this is yichud, right? That he goes in order to consummate the marriage, as it were. But what happens? Nafal churva mesa. So this ruined building collapsed, and she died. Tragic story. Amr Chachamim, they said, what about the Yerusha, right? If they're married, and if we consider this meeting in the Churba to be their marriage, then he inherits her, right? Whatever property she owns, he inherits. But if not, then he doesn't inherit her. So what do they say? Since the purpose of his going into the Churba was not to consummate the marriage, but to test her sense of smell. So Mesa and Ayarsha, so they're not considered married, and um he does not um inherit her.
Well, what's the whole point of this? He says he wants to test her smell, and then
And
he.
this, I mean, this seems to be connected just because it was also a story told by Rabbi Yehuda Marav. It's not really directly connected to our Mishnah.
Oh, okay, that I see also. But what's the whole point that he would just this a story that he's. I mean, he goes to check her smell when she dies and talk about inheritance. The whole thing seems bizarre.
Um, okay, it is a bit of a bizarre case. But this is a case that was also said by Rabbi Marav, so the Gemara quotes it here in connection to the other thing he said, which happens to do with engaged couples also, right? There's the other connection, but it's not really directly connected to the point of our Mishnah. Okay, and the last part of the Mishnah says, "Sivlonus muatin shetishamish b'mivei if he sent uh you know and not such a significant gift for her to use while she was still living in her father's house. So then
Ain't no nigmein.
right, he doesn't get them back. Yosef Ravin Sava Kamid Rav Papa. Yosef Kamar. The elder Ravin was before Rav Papa, and he said the following: Ben Shemei Sahi, Ben Shemei Su. If one of them died, whichever one, Hadarhu, or if he, or even if he is the one that calls off the marriage, Sivlonos Hadre. The gifts go back. Machal Mishta Lo Hadar, but food and drink doesn't go back. Hadra Ba'ihi, if she breaks off the engagement, Hadra Afilu Kisha Diarka, then everything goes back, even like a little bag of vegetables. Amar Avina Bered Rabbi Yeshua, V'shamin Lahen Demei Basar Bizol. And when you figure out how much it was worth, right? Let's say they consumed everything already, and you have to pay back the money. You go with the cheaper market price. Ad Kaman Bizol, how much cheaper? Ad Tilta, up to a third less than the I guess the current market price or the high price, right? You go with what was it worth at the low end of the market.
Up to a third less or up to a third? That means if
A
it, if
third
it was
less.
100,
A
if it was
third
100, they you give back
a third less.
67, or you give back 33.
You give back 67.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Next Mishnah. Moving on to a different type of a gift that doesn't require a full kinyan. And we've seen a lot of this before. Someone on his deathbed who gives over all his property to somebody else. V'shir kark, so ordinarily that would be a manas shli be'ra, would be effective. V'shir kol shehu, but he left over a little bit for himself. He's like, I'm giving you all my property except the house I own in Riverdale, right? I have a condo in Vale. I have a house in Arizona. I've got an apartment in Yerushalayim. I'm giving that all to you, except for my house in Riverdale, I'm keeping for myself. Then matnaso kayemas. Then it is and then he recovered, right? Then the gift stands. Because so first of all, here we're talking about kasav, right? He actually wrote a deed, right? So one second. Okay. No, so I guess we're talking about a typical case of the shlimera where we have to determine if his intention was really because I'm about to die, that's why I'm giving this away. And then he doesn't die, right? He recovers. So if he kept something for himself, it indicates that, like, why would you want to keep the house in Riverdale? It looks like you think you're going to recover and you're still going to live in it. So then it's not shlimera, right? So lo shir kol shu, but he gives away all his property, then ein matnoso kayemas. If he recovers, then the gift does not stay in effect, does not take effect, because he clearly was doing this only because he thought he was going to die. But he didn't die, so he didn't really mean to give away his property. Okay, so where it says Montana does lina basar umdana. So this is called an umdana, right? Where he doesn't say this specifically, right? He's not saying I'm about to die and therefore I want you to have everything, but not if I recover it, I want it back or I want to keep it. He doesn't say that. So we're reading that in to his actions, right? That's called umdana. So it looks like our Mishnah is clearly accepts the idea of umdana, right? Because you get it back if you survive. So which Tana holds this? Amar Rav Nachman, Rav Shimon ben Menasyahi. This is Rav Shimon, the Tanya of Brisa. We saw this case before already. Also, I think a guy whose son goes on a trip. B'shama shemes b'no, and he heard that unfortunately the son died, right? And now he's got no heir. V'amad v'kasav kol nechasav liacher, and he rewrites his will. Or not even his will, but he's like, oh, now I have nobody to inherit me. I'm going to give all my money to somebody else, right? And then what happened? Turned out the report was wrong. His son comes back and he's well, he's alive. So manaso matana, that gift is still a gift. Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe Omer, but Rabbi Shimon says, "Ein matnaso matana." No, we don't accept that gift. We don't validate that gift. Shabali hayodeh Shimon lokayim loyel kosfan. We do an umdana. We say that clearly what he intended was, because my son is dead, I'm giving away my property, even though he didn't say it, and so that's still a condition to the gift. So that is consistent with our mission, right? That I thought I was going to die, or you thought you were going to die. That's why you gave away the property, but you didn't die, so you didn't mean to do it.
But we learned
Okay.
earlier there's a difference between matana and yerusha. That right, that the family members they're still yorshim, even though he gives away a matana, right? Isn't right? So it would seem that the son would be entitled to yerusha as opposed
Yeah, he would, but there isn't anything left to inherit. Right? If I give away all my property today, then my children don't have nothing left to inherit. I have the right to do that. Right? But here we say that clearly he only did it because he thought his son was dead, and his son wasn't dead. Rav Sheshas has another source that would use this idea of umna. Rav Shimon Shazuri, different Rav Shimon. Tanya, somebody who's going out in chains, meaning he's going to be executed. V'amar kisfu get lishti, and he says, write a get for my wife, right? So she will now be a widow, she'll be a divorcee rather than a widow. I can't remember what would be the difference.
Yibum, right?
Yes, right, exactly. Right. If she's divorced, then she doesn't have to go through Yibum. Um, so, but notice that he said, write a get to my wife. He didn't say write it and give it to her, right? If you say write a get and give it a get, then that's a good shlichus, and that would be a valid get. But if you only say write it, sometimes a guy would write the get, but then he would hold off. He's like, well, I'm not so sure about wanting to divorce her. I'll hold on to the get until I decide. But in this case, in this case, you assume that look, the guy's being taken out to be executed. He might be a little distracted. And so it's clear, like, why would he even say write a get for my wife? It's clear that he meant, due to the circumstances, we understand that that he meant give the get to my wife. So then we do so. So that's an umdana. Chazru lamar, but this brisa continues. Then later they amended this to say Afa Mafarish Vayose B'Shayara. This also applies to somebody who's going on a caravan. In other words, he's going to cross the desert or whatever, a dangerous trip. So if he says write a get for my wife and he never comes back, we assume he means like he really wanted to divorce her and you should give the get. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Afa Masukan, even someone who is sick, right? Who's dangerously sick. So again, in all of these cases, it's an umdah, right? It's we interpret what he means based on the circumstances. Now, Rav Nachman, my Tana, lo mokin la Rabbi Shimon Shazuri. So we had two different sources of a Tana that holds umdah. Why does Rav Nachman bring Rav Shimon ben Menasya, the case of the son who you thought was dead, and Rav Shimon Shazuri brings the other case. Shani Hassam. So why doesn't Rav Nachman pick Rav Shimon Shazuri, the case of the guy who's being taken out for execution? Why isn't that his proof that there's someone who holds him to not? Shani Hassam Amar Kisu, because there, when in the case of Rav Shimon Shazuri, the guy actually says write a get. Like he actually said something, right? It's not like we're trying to determine what is his motivation in giving away the gift, right? It's like he actually took action. He actually did say something based on the circumstances, right? So we can extend that, we can stretch it, but it doesn't mean it applies to somebody who gives away his property, under certain circumstances. That's not the other one isn't really an umdana. So it's not similar to our Mishnah, right? We're trying to apply this to our Mishnah, and our Mishnah, excuse me, it's not so much of an umdana because he actually said something. Rav Sheshes, my Tamal Amakim Lach, Rav Shimon ben Menashe. Rav Sheshes, why doesn't he use the case of the son who was reported dead? Umdana de Muchach Shane. Because that's a better umdana, right? Like where he hears the news of his son being dead, and he says, "Well, in that case, I give away all my property." That is an easier assumption to make than our Mishnah, which is talking about a Shliv Meirah who reserves some property for himself. Maybe there's some other reason that he didn't want to give this particular piece of property to that guy. Maybe he wants it to be part of his Yerusha or something. So the umdana is not as strong in our Mishnah as it is in the case of Rosh Hashanah ben Menashe.
So which one? The one that is better is the one regarding the son versus the one who was going out to be executed?
Well, no, we're not comparing those two. We're comparing each of those to our Mishnah, right? So which of the cases, the case of the guy being executed or the guy who thought he lost his son, which of those is indicates that would have bearing on the case of our Mishnah, which is the Shliv Meirah who reserves property, right? So the Shliv Meirah who reserves property, we're saying is, we're getting a little more, we're making assumptions that aren't so clear in the case of our Mishnah, right? There could be other reasons that he didn't want to give the house in Riverdale to this guy, right? But in the case of the guy who's being taken out to be executed, like we're pretty sure what's going on there, right? That we don't have to be rocket scientists to figure out why he says write a get for my wife. Well, that's a little obvious. So we can't prove from that we should go deeper into assuming what the motivations are.
And with the
Who
son,
is
the son you're saying
the
with the son, that is closer to the Mishnah, right?
yeah, the son is closer to the Mishnah because clearly, like, why would you suddenly give away all your property because you have no Yarshim anymore, or you think you have no Yarshim anymore? That seems like a little more obvious. Um, no, it's actually the opposite. It's like the case of the son, we're really we're really making some assumptions, right? He didn't say because my son is dead. We're just making like, it's possible that he was already planning to give away his property. But the fact that the son died, so we're going to make a we're going to make assumptions. Who is the author of this brisa? Guy is sick and confined to bed. And they said, who should we give your property to? And he says, I thought I had a son. But since I don't have a son, now I know I don't have a son, then then I'm going to give it to John Doe, right? Or somebody was sick and confined to bed, and they said, "Who do we, give your property to after you're dead?" And he said, I thought my wife was pregnant. But now that I know it's not the case, I want to give it to John Doe. Now then, turns out that he does have a son. Or shall I say Shemarer? So the wife is indeed pregnant. The gift doesn't count because if he knew, then he indicated by his statement that if he knew, then he would have given different instructions. Is this an umdana? Right? Does this go according to Rav Shimon ben Menasya? Or is this a filu rabbanan? No. You can generally say there's no umdana, don't mashani. But if he actually states that I'm doing this because I think I have no son, right? Then that's not an umdana. That's a condition, right? Then that's a t'nai. And that does count, even if you say we don't usually do an umdana.
Doesn't that sound like the case of the son? He didn't that he sent
right because he actually states because he makes that statement. He says, if only I had a son, I would give it to my son, but I don't. So it turns out he does have a son, right? So the statement was like it's nigh, right? And he made it very clear this is not an umdana. We're not trying to determine what are his motivations. He stated his motivation. Right, his motivation is he thought he has no son. If he knew he had a son, then clearly he wouldn't have given away the property, right? Udaka Arila, isn't this obvious? Udaka Arila, the one who asked the question, like Arila, what's the question, right? It seems obvious that it's a Tanai. Maybe he's not doing it tonight. He's like, oh, if only I had a son. I wish I had a son, right? But regardless, I'm giving away my property. Right? Maybe that's what he means. Maybe it's not. It's nice. So Kamash Malon, the Gemara teacher says, no, you make that kind of statement, it's clear that that the property gift is conditional on you not having a son. Okay, we'll stop here for today.
So that again, it sounds like the case of the son, Medina Tayyam.
Yeah, except that he makes this explicit statement. In the case of the son who goes to Medina Sayyam, he hears the news, and then after a week, he makes this gift, right? So yeah, it's an umdana, right? That we assume Rav Shimon ben Menashe assumes that he's doing it because he thinks his son is dead, which isn't true, right? But the Rabbanan say no. If he doesn't make it clear, if he doesn't explicitly make it clear, we don't make that assumption. But if he says, because I have no son, right, or woe is me, I have no son, I'm giving away my property, then that is not an umdana, that's a t'nai.
The first case is an umdana with
Yeah,
the Medina Tayyam,
because we're interpreting,
where
right?
we make the assessment.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, we'll pick it up here tomorrow.
Okay, good.
Have a good day.